So, good afternoon, everybody. It's Steve Bates of the BIA, and welcome to this July edition of our Brexit webinar, skillfully prepared by my new Brexit lead, Laura Collister. Laura is always keen to remind me of how many days it is until Brexit. We're now on 617 days till Brexit. I see people are joining us as we progress here, so I shall start gently through the agenda and give you a sense as to what I hope we can cover today. The big win that I think the sector's had, and the BIA has played a role in with our colleagues at the ABPI on the medicines regulation letter and the UK government's position on that. I'll give you an update on where we see the UK political position at the moment, what's happening in the UK Parliament with new parliamentary activity. We'll then look at the UK-EU negotiation, what's happening there, deep dive into some of the issues that our sector's concerned about, what the BIA is doing, and then happy to take any questions that you have. So as you know, if you're a regular attender of this this show, we do these monthly, and last month we covered these topics on our webinar. The webinar is available on YouTube if you want to catch up on the background on the UK general election or things from last month. But I suppose the thing that I'm keenest to talk to you about today is the developments that we've had over the last month or so on medicines regulation from the UK government. And I hope this timeline gives you a sense as to the progress that's been made. The BIA has been part of the UK-EU Life Science Steering Group at the beginning of March, where we sought the government's confirmation that they would be explicit about the UK's approach to medicines regulation in Brexit. We were lucky enough to get the agreement by the government that they would make a positive statement at our BIA MHRA conference around April, and I think I've been talking that up on these webinars for the past few months. When we got into the general election period, we saw from the European Medicines Agency and the European Commission Q&A and notices about what companies should do assuming hard Brexit, and we highlighted that speedily with colleagues at the ABPI back into the UK government, which led to a discussion of this at the MISG meeting on the 28th of July. That's an internal government industry meeting where Jeremy Hunt, the Health Secretary, agreed with Greg Clark to publish a letter in the FT outlining the UK's government's position on medicines regulation, and that government letter was published alongside an FT article, front page article, on the 4th of July, and then has had broad coverage across trade and other media. We then responded on the 6th of July with a letter from the participants at MISG saying that this was a welcome move. And then just last week, you'll have seen that there was also another letter from the European trade associations to David Davis and Barnier with coverage again in the FT, welcoming that move and looking for continued close cooperation. And that was reinforced by those of you who were there by Lord O'Shaughnessy, the Junior Minister in the Department of Health, at the joint BIA MHRA conference on Friday. And I'm glad to say that that has been continued with parliamentary questions and answers as late as today. So I think this is the thing that's moved the most in the last month, and I will take you through this in a little bit of detail if you don't mind. So if you've not been following it in closely, I hope that you can see that the content of the Jeremy Hunt, Greg Clark, the Secretary of State for Health, the Business Secretary letter to the FT that I've outlined are the main points here. And there's lots of coverage of this in the media. We also emailed most people on our lists around this, so hopefully you're aware of it and you can see the value of this piece of work. I think we should be widely proud as a sector for having worked hard, made strong arguments, and great that the UK government has responded to some of those thoughts. The MISG letter was to add to the FT from the industry members of the biopharmaceutical industry strategy group, and in a sense welcomed it. These are the people who signed the letter, and I think it's great to see to see that happening. So hopefully that was of use as well. And then the third letter in the month of letters, as I'm describing July, was from this august coalition, rarely seen at European level, of everybody from the innovators to the generics, and everybody in between, highlighting this and making sure that there's highlighting the importance of securing ongoing cooperation between the UK and the EU on medicines post-Brexit. So I think that has provided a useful backdrop to the discussions that are ongoing in Brussels, but I think it's a great deliverable from the work that we've been doing for the past year or so. And here he is, James O'Shaughnessy, at the BIA conference last week, where in his speech he gave further public commitment from the UK government for the regulatory cooperation and partnership post Brexit. I thought it was a very thoughtful speech. You can see that James has spent some time really understanding the detail of this area of his brief, and it was fantastic to see him as engaged in it, and in a sense reinforced the commitments from the letter in the FT, and he was able to answer questions as well. So I think you can see it's going in the right direction. What next in this area? Well, I think that we're going to see ongoing engagement from the Pan-European group, the letter to Barnier. We're hoping that companies will endorse the letter locally with local trade associations, particularly in the EU27 outside the UK, and companies can continue to advocate around those positions which we've discussed prior on this webinar. And I hope that what we'll keep doing is keep going for continued reassurance for the sector from the government, both here and internationally, and ongoing coordination around upcoming Brexit announcements and activities. So I think if I can move off that, I think can I thank members for their help and support with this. Can I thank particularly Ginny H at the ABPI and the work that she's done. And I think you can see that when we've worked together as a sector, we've been able to deliver an effective change, or one of the key planks that we've been working on in Brexit for the past period of years. It's not a done deal, but I think you'll agree that that there is a position now that is significantly different to that which it was a month ago, and we'll reflect on that in the next month to see where we've got to. But I thought it was worth sharing that with you at some length. I'm now going to change tack a little and look at UK politics, and Laura's kindly provided me one slide, which is how is the minority Conservative government doing? Well, in some respects it's still there, which is good. I think a few weeks ago at the end of the general election, some people were saying that it might not even get formed, but a deal with the Democratic Unionist Party, the DUP, has been done for 2 years. Having said that, you can see a poll here in the bottom left-hand corner shows that that Labour, if there was to be a government tomorrow, would get the largest share of the popular vote. And I think we've seen a period of infighting with the Prime Minister weakened as a result of the general election. And that could be typified by the briefing against the Chancellor and some interesting comments by the Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson and David Davis, as set out here. So, government's there, it's got going, it's not great. Negotiations at the UK-EU level have kicked off, more on that later, but it's fairly clear that movement of people is an early stumbling block. Another thing that I think is interesting with the government of UK politics at the moment is there does seem to be a new focus on business engagement by the government post the election. There is the new EU Exit Business Advisory Group of groups that represent more than one sector, the CBI, the British Chamber of Commerce, Institute of Directors and others, and various meetings with high-profile, very large companies, meeting the Chancellor and David Davis fortnightly. And there was a significant meeting, I think it was only last Friday, the day of our conference, with David Davis and others at Chevening. And I know that that our sector was represented by senior voices, both from pharmaceuticals, and I'd also managed to get to some of the people who significant in the science base who also attended the event. So I think that the government is perhaps weaker than it was before the election, but it is certainly engaged with and listening to business in a new way. because Parliament's so important, it's also important to look at what's going on the other side of the green benches in the UK Parliament. And the Prime Minister did call for the opposition to contribute, not just criticise, but I don't think that went down too well, and doesn't seem to have been picked up by anyone on the other side of the political divide. Michael Barnier has made sure that he's done the tour and met significant other players in UK politics, Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, SNP's Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, and Labour's Welsh First Minister Carwyn Jones. It's interesting in terms of the internal politics of the Labour Party that an amendment to the Queen's speech put down by a significant Remainer in the Labour Party, a guy called Chuka, which sought for the UK to stay in the single market, not the Labour Party's official position, led to a significant rebellion on the Labour benches, but was defeated in the House of Commons, and that led to some resignations and other people leaving the opposition front bench. Significantly for our sector, this means that Daniel Zeichner left the front bench. The MP for Cambridge has been a strong supporter of Remain, and that means that he is now no longer a front bencher for the shadow team. It's interesting now to see various people breaking from the pack and suggesting lots of interesting ideas. One is that Stephen Kinnock, the son of Neil Kinnock, the former leader of the Labour Party, now a Welsh Labour MP, seeking Conservative backbench support for the UK to become Norway and go for an EEA membership model. And he's flying that kite at the moment and claims to have enough people to make it very difficult for the government in Parliament. We'll see how that plays out in the next period of time. Also, interestingly, we've got the Lib Dems as the only candidate for Lib Dems have got to elect a new leader. Tim Farron has resigned. Vince Cable, the pro-European ex-minister, is the only candidate, and that's expected to happen across the summer. End of July for deadline for nominations, with the declaration of the winner on 13th of September. So Lib Dems will have a new leader, and the SNP seem to be less insistent now on holding a timetable for a second debate on Scottish independence from the UK. The Queen's speech was an important point to set out the government's series of legislative proposals for the next couple of years. 7 Brexit bills following the Great Repeal Bill, Customs Bill, the Trade Bill and an Immigration Bill. Good to see the European Parliamentary Brexit Coordinator, Guy Verhofstadt, always good on Twitter, having some fun at the expense of the Queen's hat. But I think that these are likely to see. It shows you how the process of Brexit will dominate the business of Parliament for the next period of time. The repeal bill in detail repeals the European Communities Act of '72. Maybe it will convert EU laws into UK ones, or there might be parliamentary guerrilla fighting and there'll be a pick and choose approach. We won't really know until we see this starting its parliamentary passage in autumn, and already we've seen that the Labour Party is arguing that it's going to seek some changes to that. Who knows what will happen, but it doesn't look like this is going to have a straightforward thumping majority all the way through Parliament, so I expect skirmishes and infighting on much of these things over the autumn. Once Parliament comes back, they then also have a process to select the chairs of the select committees. This is an election where MPs vote for each other to be the chairs of committees, which attracts an increase in salary for them and is also a test of the politics of the Parliament. And I think you can see from this spread that Norman Lamb, Nicky Morgan and Hilary Benn are well-known Remainers and did well in these elections. This means that the select committee chairs now will work out with their select committees what areas they're going to follow on, and will give us an opportunity to engage with them as we go forward. For our sector, interesting to see Norman Lamb elected as the new Liberal Democrat chair of the Science and Technology House of Commons Committee. So turning, if I may, from what's going on in UK politics and the UK Parliament to the discussion of the EU-UK negotiation, and a couple of thoughts now here about about that approach. This is a slide that we shared with you last time, which is our interpretation of the EU 27's plan, or their phased approach to Brexit, the timetable against which they're operating. Talk about the exit negotiation and the bill, and that's happening now, which is called the leave part of the discussion. And here's some of the topics that may be within that: the bill, the citizens' rights, what's happened with the Court of Justice. Then, if people agree that there's been enough progress made, could be talk about transition, and then after that transition deal is discussed, a deal about what could happen next, the free trade deal, once the UK is out. And that's the approach that we think that the European Union are continuing to push. That is one that David Davis and the UK have agreed to work within. And we're starting to see this month, through a series of papers that are tabled both at on the on the gov.uk website and on the EU Commission website, some position papers from both sides with offers and approaches on various things that are coming in at the moment. And there's some detail here as to the early negotiating positions, which has some detail in it. I think probably the interesting one from our perspective, most interesting in this, and I'm not going to go into this in detail, is the privileges and immunities paper in the UK position papers, which enables or would enable the possibility for transition periods for the European Medicines Authority and the European Banking Authority. None of this is fixed, but they do give the outlines to the negotiations, and there's some detail there if you want to get into them. I've not done everything here, but we'll see. This is the detail of how the negotiations are happening. We're starting to see negotiations taking place. This is the picture of the negotiators earlier in the week. I mentioned at the top of the webinar that there's strong pushback on the UK offer on the movement of people, that it's not enough. And you can see there's always a good Twitter feed on this. The discussion around citizens' rights is a very big one, you as well as I can have your best guess as to what's going on in that table once the cameras leave. However, what happens next, the big picture, I've been using this slide, which we've credited to, which it's the BBC put together a while ago, explaining the process, and we've moved off the first line. We've moved down from line 1 of the first stage, and we're into the beginning of the second stage. Negotiations begin between the UK and the EU, so we're on line 2 rather than line 1 for the first time since we started these, and I think that gives you a sense that there's still a long way to go. For those of you who know that my favourite analysis is that if Brexit was a box set, it would be a bit like Dynasty, go on for a long time with lots of rows, and I think what I'd say is we've gone from the first series and we're probably now into series 2, where all the action happens. And at that point, I'm now going to hand over to Laura Collister, our Brexit lead here at the BIA, to take you through some of the issues that are happening in our sector and what the BIA is doing with them. But I'm not going to leave her to talk about Dynasty. Laura.
So if we start off talking about the location of the European Medicines Agency, obviously something that's been in all the papers, lots of discussions around it. And I think some of the papers have even likened it to the Eurovision Song Contest, which I think we did months ago. So good to see that they're following our webinars. So member states can put in their offers to host the EMA and also the European Banking Agency. They have to be in by the 31st of July. The European Commission will then look at those offers and rate them, and then they will go to a vote at the General Affairs Council on the 14th and 15th of November. The Commission has set out a number of criteria that countries need to consider when putting their offers together. So these include a geographical spread of agencies and priorities receiving states. So potentially a push away from some of the natural countries that have been talked about, like France, Germany, Ireland, Copenhagen, and maybe something towards Eastern Europe. But Additionally, I also say it has to be established and functioning by the date of UK withdrawal, which is a very tight timeline. It does give some ability to have a temporary office, but you have to have that fully worked up, and you have to have plans, quite specific plans around how you would actually deliver it, as well as sort of some of the support functions, like there needs to be good education, etc. locally. There also needs to be flights to all 27 EU capitals. So I was saying it's going to go to a vote. Each country is going to get 6 votes. They get to vote on three of the offers, 3 to your top offer, 2 votes to the second, and 1 to your third choice. In the first round of voting, if a country gets 14 votes of 3 points, they will automatically win. It then goes through a series of different voting scenarios if no country wins at the first round. Additionally, you can't win both agencies, so the EMA decision is going to be first, and if you win that, you can't go for the European Banking Authority. So sort of, I think sort of coming towards the November meeting, expect a lot or more talk about location, countries can put in videos around their offers. I think they're all going to go up on the Commission website in the summer with all the offers and where which countries have been seeking. So whilst talking about regulation, just to touch quickly on where BIA is. So we always talk about regulation a lot on here. Today, just sort of pointing out we're in the detail stage, so working in partnership with ABPI as we do on this, looking into the detail of the cooperation and partnership model, which Steve mentioned earlier, bit around clinical trials, and then also following up on the BIA MHRA conference with some further detail coming soon. Just a quick reminder, this is a slide from last time, is going all the way back to September when we first looked at what industry would want together with ABPI. It's still around close alignment and medicines regulation. So we always remind everyone of this, and we remind government of it, is that that is our ultimate objective. In terms of trade, it's been a busy time for trade. So again, we're working closely with ABPI, but we're also working with government, including Office of Life Sciences, Department of International Trade, Exiting EU, HMRC, Treasury, and BEIS. Areas we're looking at the moment, which actually would welcome any assistance on from members. So specifically around rules of origin and potential alternative options. So looking at what suggested alternatives there could be and what the impact on individual businesses could be. Additionally, priorities for new trade deals, so the potential upside of Brexit, and what are the priorities for bioscience and pharma, and BI is working with ABPI to produce a paper. So again, we're seeking any comments on that. We're also looking at transition. So I think this is something that's coming up a little bit more. What time length of transition and how would a transition process work? So if anyone has any views on what that process could be and how long, and crucially the evidence to support how long we would be seeking, that's my email address at the bottom, so please do contact me. This is another reminder. I think I just mentioned on regulation, still seeking alignment. This is sort of the piece around trade and moving goods and capitals across borders, as well as access to best talent and scientific research. The picture of the report, the front page of the report, is the report that was pulled together for the 6th of September with PwC and ABPI, and the report is still relevant to our preferred position. Also touching on other things we're doing, so Brexit Health Alliance was launched earlier this month, led by the NHS Confederation. BIA is a member of this, along with the ABPI, and one of the areas we will be focusing on specifically around that is around regulation and trade. We're also looking at helping our members do business planning for Brexit, so currently developing a series of member seminars looking at practical aspects of Brexit. So for instance, what do you need to do on regulation? And we will have more information and more activity around that in the autumn. On movement of people, we're going to do an event at Conservative Party Conference, which is being supported by one of our members. And then obviously the flip side of Brexit is life sciences industrial strategy. and some areas of Brexit have moved into the industrial strategies, especially the science collaboration and funding piece. Hopefully that will be published soon. We're also looking at sort of in our planning process a little bit more broader, so in terms of international events and then communications around key events, bringing together all the partners.
So, thank you, Laura. I hope that's been useful for you. I hope you can see that we've moved the ball on medicines regulation with a number of letters, that the May government is here but is struggling. Parliament is flexing its muscles. We're into Series 2 of the UK-EU negotiation, but nothing's decided. The EMA beauty contest is going to get going in earnest, we think, in terms of location in the next couple of months. And we're getting into the detail on trade, people and regulation, and open to member help and support in doing those things, as well as planning these seminars for the autumn about what do you need to do to take action rather than the lobbying that we're doing on your behalf. I hope that's been of use, and I'm happy to open it up to some questions and see if anybody has got any questions for us. Please type them in, because there's many of you on the phone. So Brian Edwards asks whether we're doing an impact assessment on Brexit, and the answer is that we are looking at scenarios at the behest of government, and I think at the moment my thinking is that that scenario planning is something that we'd want to share first with government. I don't quite know the timeframes for it, but I know thank you to members who've helped us understand impact of various scenarios, which builds on the work that we did last year. Diana Ribeiro asks, what is the impact of Brexit on the EAMS scheme, the Early Access to Medicine scheme? I think in the most basic process at the moment, not much, because EAMS is something that's governed by the UK authorities, both the MHRA and then its engagement with the various NHS processes. So at the moment it's not affected. I think this is one of those things where the detail of how clinical trials are going to work and whether there's any impact across the piece and how that works for the future of regulation is something that we need to work on the detail of. There was an interesting session on this at on how it had worked in the last year at our conference with the MHRA last week, and I'm sure the write-up of that would be interesting for you to see. Watch out for that. We should have it ready by the next month or so. Where can we keep up to date with the progress of the Brexit Health Alliance? I think the NHS Confederation are the lead organisation with regard to that. So my first port of call would be the NHS Confederation's website. I know that there's been a couple of meetings this week to further that. And as it's chaired by Hugh Taylor of Accelerated Access Review fame to us here, former Permanent Secretary in the Department of Health, and Niall Dixon, ex-BBC Health Editor and now at the King's Fund. I think you'll see some high-profile communications from them. Confed website is the best place to go. Is there any consideration special support for suppliers in respect to specific small-sized UK-based companies? It's a good question. I think the question here, what we need to be able to do here is explain particularly the challenges. What are the challenges that are specifically faced by the pinch points in Brexit? Are these transitional? Are these structural? And what is it that could be done within the terms of the deal that might come out that would be useful? I'd be keen, Joe, to know more of the specifics that would be useful. We've an open channel of communication, and I think helping the government understand what these pinch points are would be useful. I don't know the particular thing that you're alluding to with regards to that question, but happy to take an email from you and see what we can do. Do I have a timeline for the courses surrounding Brexit? I know areas such as REACH could have a significant impact on shipping UK products if they are not registered. Great question. The answer is I don't know how have a timeline for our courses. I think we're looking at something in the autumn, and it's exactly this type of thing, the impact of REACH and how that might work, that we need to be on. I'm conscious that these are becoming pressing issues for companies. I think the capacity that we've got as an association is probably to do a couple this year and then move them into the beginning of next year. But we hope to have a plan by the end of the summer, and your advice as to what would make sense in which order is very helpful. When will we know the scope of the MHRA's work post-Brexit? Good question. I think we will know that once we know what the deal is. And I don't think we'll know what the deal is for a while. The MHRA have posted some more information on their website in the last couple of days with regard to this. I'd advise you to stay up to date with their Brexit page on the MHRA's website. That's what they'll be able to tell you officially. But of course, this is all subject to a discussion around what the deal is, and we're best to do that. Will the recommendations from the Accelerated Access Review be included in the industrial strategy? Well, you've seen that some of the recommendations from the Accelerated Access Review were announced last week by the Government Minister, Lord O'Shaughnessy, at the BIA MHRA conference. I would hope to see that there'll be further government responses to that accelerated access across the autumn. I don't know exactly how they'll do it. Are there any ideas for the CHMP and patient testimonials in the decision-making process in the UK, and what will they look like post-Brexit? Don't know the answer to that one. Sorry. Don't know is the answer to that one. DIT reported a record year for inward investment. Do we have an indication of the sentiment across EU, re the UK as a business location? I think the UK bioscience sector remains robust. As you know, my argument is always that the reason for that is that we are a globally competitive location because of our excellent science base, fantastic people, can-do attitude, and a host of other reasons why the UK is a natural partner for business, the third global cluster, as we would put it. So I'm bullish. I still see continued investment into the UK. Obviously, the pound at the moment helps, but also the expertise of our businesses, which are already in the risk business, for which Brexit is only one element of political risk when you compare that with, you know, all the rest of things, the scientific risk, the clinical risk, the regulatory risk. People put it in a basket and make their decision. The UK remains robust, and I think 2017 is proving to be a good year for BIA members. Recommendation, should we recommend some Twitter feeds for Brexit? That's a good point. We don't. Who should we do? Let's do that at our next webinar. We'll put some good ones that we follow. I hope that our Twitter feed is a useful one, and we try and keep up to date with some interesting ones. But yeah, we'll do some Twitter people to follow who we found helpful and useful during the period of time. Thank you. Unless there's any more, I think we've come to the end of our time. We are going to run one of these in August. Sort of foolish us. It's easier to run a webinar than it is to run an entire process with the sector around engagement on Brexit, as we were doing this time last year. We're aiming to do that on the 22nd of August. It will be interesting to see how much of this has moved in the next 3 weeks, but perhaps it'll give us some space to lay out some of the thinking that we're going for the next half of the year, and a recap for people who may be on holiday this year, this time round, for next time round. So I hope that's been of use. Many thanks for joining us, and look forward to seeing you next month.